So my friend Peter here, AICP, is a senior research scientist with Virginia's DOT Research Division, the Virginia Transportation Research Council. He also chairs the Transportation Research Board's Committee on Public Transportation Planning and Development. His research can be described as multimodal plan engineering. That's a new word. Ranging from pedestrian and bicycle facilities to road diets, we love a road diet, to transit topics, and he'll be summarizing a study of transit activity data. But first, I think you might need my pen.
I don't have enough pins.
Yeah.
Here? Higher? What's there?
Impact flare. All right, so just a little more about me as a multimodal research scientist at the Virginia Transportation Research Council. That means I work for the Virginia DOT, but we're in a University of Virginia building, so we get to use these great big toilet paper rolls. The multimodal part of my job just means sometimes I bike to work, but not usually with that guy on the back. I don't know where he came from. Sometimes I take off work to drive a bus for UVA because driving a bus is way more fun than studying data about buses, right? I've got bad news for how you're going to spend the next 6 minutes of your life. I first need to give a shout out to my co-investigator on this study, Afrida Raida. She, however, is a PhD student, and she's busy getting that PhD, and I am a representative of the patriarchy with a full-time job. That allows conference travel twice a year. Maybe good budget years, so you get me instead. So let's imagine you're a developer and you see this parking lot that's just storing these janky old buses, and you want to redevelop it into something awesome. You've had your architect draw up this 3D plan. It's made of Legos. There's a commuter rail station right by this site, and you want to know how do the boardings vary throughout the day, but the commuter rail agency doesn't have the data that way. Or maybe you work for our Smart Scale, Virginia's prioritization process for transportation projects, and you know if you had transit data at the hourly level, you could give transit points for congestion reduction, but you don't work for the transit agency and you don't have the data. What you want to do is push button, get data. And so you've heard that there's an easy way to do that with some of these LBS data products, sort of things like Streetlight. Jacobs is one of our conference sponsors. Don't kill me, Jacobs. But you're also conscientious. You don't want to push button, get trash. So we pushed the button. We got some bus, heavy rail, and commuter rail data from Streetlight for Virginia, and we compared it to some agency-provided data. So it's hourly boarding data that we were comparing, just to see what we could make out of this. Now, we didn't want to use COVID data, because the only thing worse than trashy transit data is COVID transit data. So we went back all the way to 2019, and our Streetlight data is not exactly estimating boardings, it's transit activity, so it's important to say that. I don't want to show any pictures of Streetlight because it's super proprietary, but just as a description, they take a bunch of data, and that might include the data from the phones of people riding this bus called Pancake. And then they figure out what kind of mode those trips were most likely on. All right, so looking at our transit agency data, we have a city near DC, a rural agency, 2 college towns. The city near DC is a 2-hump camel. This college town is a camel with a bad hair day. These are the hourly boarding variations. Streetlight didn't have data for these two, so I've X'd them out. In fact, we found that Streetlight didn't have data for about 80 municipalities in Virginia, including some that do have fixed route transit service. So we proceeded with looking at these these are our bus agency representatives. When we look at the larger college town, the data are approaching trash levels. We did 3 different streetlight analyses. They're the dashed lines. One was at the whole municipality level, and then the other two were using buffered bus stops at 2 different levels of data months. But for the city near DC, the data's pretty good. As the kids say, it's bussin'. So you could nitpick and say, well, Streetlight's seeing some data between 1 and 4 a.m. in the nighttime when this agency doesn't operate. For most purposes, this is pretty good. Okay, on to heavy rail, metro rail. The agency provided data from 2019 has 2 peaks. 2 hump camel. People get on the metro rail system at these 6 stops we studied throughout the day. There's a morning peak, there's an afternoon peak. We know how that works. Streetlight kind of got that messed up at some stations, but it was pretty good at others. So again, a little bit hard to tell. Maybe because the courthouse station is underground, maybe that's why it was not so great, but it also was a much higher ridership station than McLean. So we thought higher ridership would be more likely to generate good data. For commuter rail, the agency provided data wasn't actually directly this format. We had to sort of do some figuring. But it's a 1 hump pattern because all these stations we looked at are out in Virginia. Commuter rail takes people into DC in the morning, so you're only getting on the stations in the morning. Streetlight had different levels of sort of ghosting data, or ghost data, for these afternoon peaks that maybe didn't really exist at some of these stations. And there are various reasons why you might think that could have happened. But I'm guessing you're starting to see a pattern with what I'm talking about. I don't want to be a grouch, but I just want to say that we weren't able to show that Streetlight accuracy was correlated with ridership. You could use ridership for bus agencies to figure out whether Streetlight would have any bus activity data at all, but you couldn't use it to tell whether it would be good. So just like this fresh Elmo is snazzy but empty, we found that Streetlight didn't have any data for some of those low to moderate ridership localities. But your mileage will vary because they are always updating the metrics, they are always in doing new processes. But the main thing I want to say is don't throw out the old ways. Whether you have automated passenger counters or mechanical clickers, you need the transit agency data to make sense of the big data. Thank you very much. Virginia is for transit lovers.